Oh!
Oh, games!
Well!
Oh, I'm so happy to discuss them.
It's February. Jeez. I stared right at the date and then I ruined it.
Are you on Shnapple?
No, I'm just on my fucking calendar.
That was your mistake.
It's February 10th, 2016.
This is Idle Thumbs 249. I'm Chris Remo.
I'm Jake Rodkin.
And I'm Nick Breckon. And congrats to you two for shipping a video game.
Oh, thanks, Nick.
You did it.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Thank you. We shipped our game Firewatch yesterday after working on it for over 2 years. And it's out. You can buy it on Steam and PlayStation 4.
It's at firewatchgame.com. It's one of the great URLs. Yep. It's also available at whatisfire.watch, thanks to a strange person.
That's true.
Gotta mention
hopefully using an Idle Thumbs hover code of your one can only imagine.
Yeah, so
yeah, that's out. It's a first-person exploration story game. If that kind of thing is interesting to you, it's called Firewatch. It's out right now, and that's about it.
And now what we're going to talk about is Tomb Raider.
That's true. I did play Rise of the Tomb Raider this week.
It has risen.
Yes, she has risen, and it was surprising because I didn't know anything about what this game was. I kind of assumed that I did, but it turns out I did not. The reason I played Rise of the Tomb Raider specifically is because, I'd been playing The Witness, obviously, since it came out. And I think I mentioned this last week, or maybe the week before, I can't remember. The Witness came out, and then Tomb Raider was coming out, which I had heard recommended by Danielle, our former Idle Thumbs co-host, who now is the co-host of Idle Weekend, and she really liked it. And I'm like, okay, well, I should probably play that game when it comes out, because I haven't played a new, 3D, world,
Did you play the Tomb Raider that came out 3 years ago?
No, I haven't played one of the sort of
You played Guardian of Light?
I did play that, but in terms of main sort of traditional Tomb Raiders, I hadn't played one of those since Underworld.
Oh, okay.
Which is several years ago, ago at this point. But I loved that game, and I haven't played any since then. I didn't play Anniversary. I didn't play the one that's just called Tomb Raider, I guess. And then XCOM 2 is coming out, and XCOM, the first XCOM remake by Firaxis I loved it a lot. And XCOM 2 has been getting incredibly good reviews, and it seems like if you liked XCOM, you will like this probably. So that was there. And then the sort of shadow looming over all of this perspective game playing was The Goddamn Witness, because I have so much left. I mean, I've solved 300 puzzles in that thing, but as far as I know, that's only half of the puzzles.
Yeah.
And
Jonathan Blow's The Goddamn Witness.
Yeah, exactly. And so that is one of those games that I know will absorb as much time as I put into it for quite some time, right? That's a given at this point, really. And so
it's your go-to game right now.
Yeah, and it's the one that I sort of think about. It's the one that occupies brain space when I'm not thinking about the game that we're launching or any of the other stuff I have to do in my life. That's the thing that just seeps in around the edges, and I'm like, oh man, I should try this way of solving this. There's a key puzzle type that I have not. I thought I knew how it worked, but I don't.
Right.
It turns out I don't. And so that just pokes into my brain when I have a free moment sometimes. And I'm like, man, I got to figure out how to solve that goddamn thing. And so then in the context of that, in the shadow of The Witness, I was like, I can't load up XCOM 2 because that's also going to be a game that eats time.
That's just life consumption.
Yeah, it's I'm going to get attached to my squatties. I'm going to, be involved in this big campaign. Even though that's probably the one I want to play most right. It's probably the game that I actually want to play most right now. this is the stupidest thing to say, but like it feels irresponsible to play it relative to the witness still existing in my life, which is idiotic. I mean, I'm an idiot for saying that. That doesn't make any sense at all. But that's like emotionally how it feels because I'm dumb. And so I'm like, okay, well, I was also excited about Tomb Raider, so I'll play that. I had no idea what this game is. Do either of you guys know what the deal with this game is?
No, I didn't play the previous Tomb Raider.
This game.
Or this one?
Yeah, I read a lot of the coverage of the previous game, but I did not play Tomb Raider
14 or whatever it was.
No. I mean, I know what that game was. Okay. But I don't know what this game is.
I started playing this game and it opens...
Presumably Tomb Raider 2.
Well, sort of. I mean, I don't know. So you start it up and... in the style of games like this now, it opens like the opening of an Uncharted game.
Yeah.
You know, in a big set piece where you're climbing from like crazy crags and disasters are happening. And
crazy crags.
You know, like the Aggro Crag, for instance.
It starts when Lara Croft was a contestant on Nickelodeon Guts. It's a hard reboot that puts her firmly in the millennial demographic.
Well, you flash back to her childhood when she was competing on
Legends
Guts,
of the Hidden Temple,
climbing the Aggro
That's what
Crag.
I mean, yeah.
And that set the stage for her tomb raiding adventures.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Where are they now? Nickelodeon Guts.
So
she's at a startup.
She's in Siberia in this game.
Which, of course, is the cyber realm that this startup it's the social
so the
space.
thing that was surprising to me about it, as I was playing, I started getting all these little like experience pop-ups on the side of the screen, and it would be like headshots or like translating skill level 2, and I'm like, what on earth? Like I would read some sort of Greek murals, and it would be like Greek translation upped, and I'm like, what on earth what is this game? It turns out this game has like a really big kind of skill and crafting and experience system. You can hunt animals and skin them and craft stuff out of them. You up your skill levels in all different areas. You apply skill points to different skill trees.
Okay, is any of this stuff good? Or is it there because every game has that stuff?
Okay, so
turns out it's a game that's made this year.
I know, right? It felt really bad at first because in the context of the hyper-linear, like cinematic set piece introduction, it felt completely extraneous because I was like, this is so stupid. What's the point of having these skills if all I'm doing is going through quarters? But then you reach a point in the game where you basically have... You're in essentially like a big hub area in this snowy Siberian kind of wasteland, and you're finding stuff and you're completing objectives in it, and you're hunting and you're building up your you have to go back. You essentially lose all your weapons and everything, and you have to just make a bow from scratch using wood that you reclaim from trees in the area.
Make a reclaimed bow.
It's an artisanal bow. And it actually felt really cool. Like, it felt really awesome to be in this incredibly harsh environment and be like, man, I don't have a gun. I don't have anything. I am starting with just a crappy bow and a limited number of arrows. And I have to fashion more arrows, and I have to make this bow better and, obviously acquire more stuff over time. But it actually really kind of justified itself for me because, so many games do... Well, actually, I don't know if as much anymore, but definitely there was a trope for a while of the sort of Metroid.
I'm sitting here thinking about Metroid.
With all of your equipment and abilities, and then take it all away and you have to build it back up. Yeah. And this combines that structure with the sort of modern pseudo open world experience crafting stuff, and it actually feels to me like a clever. It feels, I don't know, I like it so far anyway. And I actually don't know if the previous Tomb Raider game was like this or not.
I don't think
and so I feel very ignorant.
Pretty sure it was not.
You should do a run where you deliberately subvert and invert your hierarchy of needs and don't ever craft anything else, but get really fucking good at Greek translation.
I mean, because I'm me, of course, I have to go and track down all of the stuff to be translated.
You're reading
in
so
any
many
area.
tapestries and shit.
Well, now, so in Siberia, there's a bunch of stuff about Mongolian, historical Mongolian invasion and so on. And so a lot of the stuff that you translate is in Mongolian. So that's the thing I've been leveling up, but I've totally leveled up my Mongolian. So translation.
Sick.
Right. I've leveled up my Mongolian could refer to your party member or your translating skill.
Yep.
Or both.
Yep.
My Mongolian is high level and I can talk to him really well.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
You gotta do both.
Before you mentioned Metroid, I was thinking that if they actually made like a new Metroid Prime game today, that's exactly what they would do. Is they would rip everything away from Samus, and then she would just have to like walk around and like smash enemies and take them back to her ship and like build up her weapons. Like that's just every game now. Of course they would do that. So it makes sense to me that like
more like Mine-troid, more like Craft-roid.
It is so much more like that.
Yeah.
So would you recommend this game at this point? It seems like a good game.
Yeah, I like it so far.
Good video
for sure.
game.
Yeah. I mean, just because of just realities of available time, I don't think I've played enough of it to make any kind of overarching judgment. But
that first impression seems pretty strong.
Yeah. Well, my initial first impression was like confused and sort of negative. And then I feel like it sort of it explained itself in a way.
That was actually my arc with Deus Ex 3. I was really I liked the first part of that, but then when it actually turned into when it revealed itself to be not a hallway, I was happier.
Right.
Yeah.
That seems to be that's definitely a thing in like sort of the last generation of games, I think, where there's been a renewed interest in these sort of opened up player verb sets and large kind of more free structures, but it's also, I guess, still difficult to internally make the case.
It's hard to put people right in the middle of the map and say, trust that it will be cool.
Exactly. Yeah. So that makes sense.
I don't really remember the original Tomb Raider, like essentially like what the balance of that game was. How much combat does this game contain? Like what, is there like a stealth system? Like, can you get around any of that stuff? Or do you have to kill a million dudes, I guess is my question.
You do have to, there is combat. You do have to kill dudes. But it's tough to say because the stuff I've played so far is so wildly different. It started off with all of this just kind of climbing and quick time events and sort of shimmying across ledges things. And then I went through some sections that are just kind of, the kind of Prince of Persia version of Tomb Raider, where it's all kind of environmental puzzles and jumping around and stuff. And, I love that. And then once it opened up into the hub area, there was a lot of this other stuff that is neither combat nor sort of platformy stuff. But then sprinkled in there were numerous combat encounters. And then there was a encounter with a fucking bear in a cave that like was actually quite intense because it just thunders at you, and if it catches you, like you're pretty much dead, and all you have is a crappy bow. That was pretty cool. I mean, that was actually
have you found any additional tombs?
I have definitely found some tombs, and in like Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade style, you just wreck those two. Like, I mean, there's no care paid to the sanctity of this tomb. It
is fucking rated.
I was gonna say you're sort of in for it.
Absolutely rated.
You signed up for that.
Yeah, I don't mean just like looting it. I mean like this tomb is gone now. Like it's classic that.
What Lara Croft is actually collecting is the last memory of what these tombs were like. That's it.
It belongs in a museum of my mind.
My mind. This tomb will die with me.
Yeah, I like it though. I'll play more of it.
Cool.
Yeah. Rise of the Tomb Raider. It's cool, I think.
Nice.
I mean, It's just, again, I've had there's so many different like versions of this game that I've already played just inside this game. But it feels like the one that it feels like the one that I'm in now is the real one, and the other stuff was like getting
We'll see when your guy levels back up.
My guy?
Yeah.
She's a guy now?
Whatever.
Yeah.
It's a video game.
Yeah.
When your Lara levels up, and when you start finding those big tombs that are full of dudes, and you have 3 guns at the end of the game, we'll see what you.
True, and lots of Mongolian scrolls.
So many scrolls. You'll just be hot translating left and right, like shoot 3 guys, decode 3 scrolls.
You unlock akimbo translation.
Yeah.
Yep.
You're dual wielding your moleskins.
Also skinning 2 moles and making a wallet.
Make a stupid hip notebook that you...
You skin a mole and make a moleskin? Actually, it's not made out of the skin of moles. But in a pinch. Anyway, Nick, you played XCOM 2, the game that I talked myself out of playing, even though I want to badly.
I talked myself out of playing it for maybe a day or 2, and then just relented.
How photoreal are those aliens in XCOM 2?
They're
like way more
would
than
not
last
believe
time.
that they aren't real, Jake.
What, they look like a photo of an alien?
Yeah, pretty much.
So they're like kind of fuzzy and indistinct.
Yeah, a little. Yeah, they're just sort of
something
like
else.
Yeah, it's like signs. You see like a foot every now and then, just like corner of a
That would be
doorway.
a terrifying way to make a strategy game.
It's just like
The XCOM cinematic mode where you just... Mm-hmm. Your guy just always goes behind a wall and you see the flash of some muzzles. And
You're
then
just
it tells
shooting
you,
it.
It tells you if you hit or missed.
right. Yeah, you just target shadows basically.
Anyway, what is XCOM 2 for reals?
It's a sequel to XCOM, which is the Firaxis game that is based on the old XCOM games of, I guess, just tactical strategy, based around alien invasion. This game is weird. I did the classic thing that I always do, which is I skip the intro cutscene and then watch every succeeding cutscene because I'm completely confused as to what the actual story is at that point. But it's really weird. Like, it starts out, I guess, where the aliens... I can't tell if it's a retcon. I think I heard somebody say it's a retcon.
Huh.
But basically, you're now in the position of... Like, in the original game, you were playing as kind of like a secret organization that was, ostensibly... God, I don't know. Just trying to resist the alien invasion outside the...
Right.
It was like a weird ad hoc, like, global...
Super governmental...
extra governmental. Like a shadow government, council
cabal,
or some garbage thing. Now, I guess you lost... And that,
are you a ragtag group?
You're a ragtag group.
Oh, man.
Jake, in a weird, spaceship that you fly around, that you stole from
what's
aliens.
The retcon? The fact that you lost, or
I don't know.
That's not really a retcon.
It's not a retcon.
Most XCOM
So
players
Humans have lost this fight millions of times and won it a couple of times.
Right.
It's counted as a net loss for humanity. XCOM 1 was. We lost so many guys.
I think this is stupid because I could just read the Wikipedia
the Mongolian
page.
translation did not help us.
I can just read the Wikipedia page and actually know what the story of this stupid game is, but I feel like what it actually is that at the end of the first game, you won, but then there was some weird thing where because you won using alien DNA or something to create a weird hybrid thing, now that race has just become the aliens essentially
this does
genetically subverted
this does not sound
humanity.
That relevant to what XCOM 2 is. What?
I mean, it kind of is in that
but you move guys around turn to turn and then you shoot a gun
and all that
you
stuff
miss
is
an alien
fine. All that
die.
stuff is fine. But what I'm saying is you're a ragtag group. You're flying around in a spaceship now.
Okay, do you want me to read you the Wikipedia
Yeah,
summary?
actually, I would be very interested.
The game is set in 2035, 20 years after the events of XCOM Enemy Within.
So it is, yeah.
XCOM takes place in 2015? Mm-hmm.
You mean last
past
year,
the events
Chris.
of XCOM. That was a strange move. In a scenario in which humanity was defeated by aliens, XCOM proved incapable of attenuating the alien threat and was quickly betrayed by the Council nations who surrendered to the aliens shortly after the invasion began.
Oh, so it was politics.
XCOM became nothing more than a resistance force and went off the radar to avoid persecution at the hands of aliens. Most of its members either submitted to alien rule and left behind their past, or some, like Central Officer Bradford, refused the alien administration and went into hiding. Earth is now controlled by the aliens through the puppet Advent administration, and XCOM has been long forgotten, members silenced and records erased. Advent has done much to gradually improve public opinion of aliens, most notably by the propagation of the belief that the aliens came in peace and the forces of Earth retaliated aggressively and with prejudice. This is presumed to have happened right after the player researches MECs
Anyway.
The player again assumes the role of the commander, etc.
Yeah. I guess that's the relevant sentence. Yeah. The player again is a commander of troops. That shoots aliens.
That entire summary could have been shortened to the player again resumes the role of commander.
Right.
Hopefully, someone with a cigar screamed into a video screen at a bunch of world leaders, "You sold us out. You betrayed us." And then it said XCOM 2 faded up as like a cigar is extinguished.
Right. Yeah. It probably did.
And then
I hit escape.
Huge ass square guns shot an alien in the face.
Yeah.
And maybe did or did not hit that alien.
Probably right before it fades out, you see like the face of the UN Secretary General or whatever, and then his eye glints in a weird way that suggests he's an alien.
Right, or like a strange shadow just is seen hitting the windows of all of those UN people.
That's all the alternate way to do it.
Yeah.
Whereas they realize too late their tragic mistake.
Yeah, they.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, so
the phone call had, is someone else there? Are you talking to someone else? Just no, what? And then you sort of hear a dish clatter in the background, and then it says XCOM 2.
Yeah, so it's probably like that.
There's not a subtitle. It's not XCOM 2, XCOM Betrayed.
No, there is no subtitle.
I'm really happy
love that
about
there's not. I'm glad that there's not.
Hopefully, actually, it just has the guy that says RoboCop 2 say XCOM 2 in the opening cinematic that you skipped.
But yeah, this game is weird. I mean, it's relevant to bring this stuff up because the experience of playing this game for the first time, maybe my memory of the first XCOM is garbage at this point. Maybe I'm just used to kind of starting that game up and just ignoring everything and hitting escape 1,000 times and getting into the game. But this game feels like...
I mean, there was a pretty heavyweight introduction to that game because you played through that entire tutorial mission that set up all the story.
Right, which is what I expected with this game.
Yeah.
After maybe, I don't know, an hour of playing this game, I still felt like I was doing tutorial missions and getting hit with cutscenes and like still learning kind of the basics of this game. It's really strange. There are things about this game that are really good. Like, I guess primarily, in my opinion, like the concealment mechanic, which is totally new. Like when you're moving your guys around on the tactical field, usually in the original game, the aliens would sort of get the jump on you every time simply because you don't know where they are. They're hidden behind the fog of war and you're running around and you just run into them and you go, oh shit. And
Do you get your own fog?
Kind of, yeah. You basically get your own fog where now if you detect them before they detect you, you can see the grid space that they can, like that their vision, right? And so every turn they sort of walk on a patrol and that grid moves. But what it does is it allows you to sort of get into position and kind of plan like, oh, they're probably going to walk over here now. So now I can line up all my guys, get my sniper in position or whatever, and then like basically pull off an ambush. It's really good. It makes you feel like, I don't know, you actually have some kind of control over, the situation of the battle. Whereas before it was just, oh shit, I'm constantly falling into the trap of these aliens.
So you missed in the opening cutscene where they were talking about how they're a ragtag group, but now the tables have turned because we have something they don't expect.
Right. The element of surprise.
Says like female second in command military person who reveals some sort of weird box that lets you hide from an alien.
Right. Yeah.
Huh.
So using that box,
the XCOM.
Yes, the XCOM. The XCOM box. The Xbox.
Using this Xbox technology. We can use this to directly place soldiers into the scene. We call it the Direct Xbox. It's former XCOM technology.
Using this supercomputer that we've recovered from
available
China.
Only on PC.
Yeah.
The real Direct Xbox. Your Windows computer. Anyway, Nick. Let's hear about the gameplay of XCOM 2.
Well, I mean, to the point at which I played about 3 hours of the game, it still feels a lot like XCOM. They've done some sort of minor tweaks and adjustments to the way that, the sort of underlying mechanics work. There are just more things you can do within a given round. Like if a guy has a primary weapon and a pistol, now you no longer have to like switch between those two things. Sort of like just little tweaks to the game that just make it easier and less gross to play. That being said, I wish that there were a couple of things that they did address because it feels like I brought up the story for a reason, which is that the first couple hours of this game is a lot of like the game kind of basically like the sort of overworld map equivalent of the game showing you what you need to do and then pulling the camera back to where you are and then saying, now go click on that thing. that happens both in the tactical game a lot, and then also in the new sort of overworld map. Strategic layer, which is totally different now. You don't... Well, it's not totally different, really, but... in the previous game, you sort of picked a region of the world that you were sort of responsible for, and then I guess we're just being constantly bombarded by the aliens. Now you're this weird ragtag group in a spaceship that flies around, and you're effectively doing the same thing, but it's almost more like a board game now, where there are icons laid around the map that represent different missions and things that you can complete. And because your ship takes time to move from one region to the other, you're sort of balancing between the like cost of moving from one mission to the other, and kind of making decisions based on the amount of time it's going to take to get to this thing or that thing.
Does it end up feeling to you more like you are on a strategic offensive in this game? Because XCOM, the original, it very much was. Like you said, you pick a region and then you're sort of just like fighting a war of attrition in that area and holding out as much as you possibly can, more or less. This sounds more like you're...
Yeah, they flipped it now. It's effectively like... Because
they have the thing where you can hide and have the upper hand, and where you're sort of worming
now you've just lost, so now you may as well go on the offensive.
You're the guerrilla force. So
basically. Yeah, which is cool.
This actually... just hearing you talk about this actually makes me desperately want to play this game, because I'm just imagining the things I liked about XCOM in the broad strokes, but just being implemented in a different way, both in terms of the differences in the tactical view that you enumerated with the concealment stuff, as well as just a different structure on the strategic view. And so I'm just like, if this game can just sort of hit the same like pleasure centers in my brain, but in a novel way,
I mean, like all of the soldier classes are completely different, although kind of the same. I mean, they've changed it up enough to where it's no longer familiar, but is, there's still a sniper, I mean, but all of the abilities are different, and, they've done enough to refresh it where it feels like a justifiable, like new thing. I don't know. I guess I probably haven't played enough to give it like a full take, but
this is the half takes episode.
This is the half take episode, but I feel like I'm gonna really enjoy this game. And then there are just a few weird like aesthetic things that just bother me, which is that you no longer have like the cool underground base that you can just sort of burrow into. It's this spaceship that you fly around that has a finite amount of space that you can build on.
You don't get to graft extra weird lumpy rooms to make it look like a rebellion command ship from Star Wars or something, where you just have a blob pod.
Yeah, I want to make the glob pod, but it's just it's just a weird thing where you have to like. You've got this spaceship and it's got some junk in it, so you got to clear out the junk and then build a room in it. Which is just kind of like, Yeah. But other than that, you're
not making a like Captain Forever, just space frigate.
Yeah, no, I mean, there are just a few things like that, and it's kind of weirdly buggy and not like. I thought it was just my PC, but a lot of people went online and said that they went online. I sound like I'm in 1997, but anyway.
You surf the net.
I surf the net.
A lot of people have been posting on the internet.
Yeah, that it's sort of strangely unoptimized, and they're just just weird things like you'll hit a thing that just takes forever to load, and it just doesn't run as clean as the original game. So that's kind of disappointing. But other than that, I'm glad that they pushed a big reset button on the sort of underlying mechanics, and then still use the same theme. You know what I mean? Like it's essentially like if they just took a lot of design meetings from the original XCOM and said like, what if we did this thing instead of this thing?
Right.
And went, okay, that's what we're doing with this game, and that's cool.
That is like what Firaxis does basically, right?
Yeah.
You look at the history of Sid Meier's Civilization, or just sort of the Sid Meier formula generally, or not formula, but like the Sid Meier approach generally.
Yeah. They're not building on top of the thing usually. They're sort of tearing it down just a little bit.
You can feel
and
the
then
tape being rewound, and then going back to that one design meeting where they just said, "Do we go left or right?" And it's like, well, this time let's go left and see where that takes us instead.
Yep.
Yeah, that's interesting though. I mean, that's a really cool approach to doing sequels because
that's why I think that's one of the reasons every Civilization game release feels like an event, even for the ones that like don't hit as big. When there's a new Civilization game, it always feels like, okay, this is a big deal,
right?
And I think it is because they question enough assumptions that it doesn't just feel like Okay, yep, New Civilization 2016,
Yeah.
This time 50% more units and the art's better or whatever.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
What was I just going to say? Oh yeah, I have to admit, like, as a longtime PC gamer, it did feel kind of cool to see that someone was making a really high budget, well produced PC exclusive, because I mean, we're definitely in an era where the sort of landscape of gaming across all platforms is pretty amazing generally. And PC does get a lot of unique stuff, but usually on it's
not at this scale right now.
Exactly. Usually on the sort of more modest production
unless
scale,
you're sitting in a cockpit.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
If you're in a cockpit, you're getting the most indulgent shit imaginable on PC from all angles. Yeah. But I'm sure this game will come to consoles eventually anyway.
Yeah, I'm sure
it's been selling incredibly well. So
I actually really wish that it had. The nice thing about it is that
It's cool that they're not sim shipping. I mean, I wonder if they looked at XCOM 1 and went, we could probably just let this simmer on PC for a few months, and then whatever it ends up being, that can go onto a console,
Right, because Firaxis, the other thing Firaxis definitely does is like the big expansion pack that sort of rebalances everything.
Right, the knobs all get tuned a little bit more.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be surprised if that hits consoles.
If the console one comes with the first one or two big DLCs at Christmas or something. Yeah.
Right.
I can see some reasons why maybe they might, they at least initially decided not to, because they've added enough controls during the tactical game that it would be a little difficult playing with a controller. Like I wanted to play on my TV so that Janelle could watch while I play. She was interested in just like looking over my shoulder. And so I tried to play it with a controller, but it doesn't actually have native gamepad support.
Right, so that's crazy.
Yeah, so I played with the Steam controller.
Are there any good community Steam controller mappings yet?
There are a couple, although it didn't work correctly. Like I would load one up and then go into the game, and like that mapping didn't work. It was really kind of a bummer. But the default mapping is
there will probably be some that bubble up, I would imagine.
Yeah, it was a little frustrating getting it to work, but and then once I did, I realized like, even the default one doesn't quite. It's just there are too many controls, and it just it was not a good experience. But yeah, it's a weird thing. It's like I thought. I was really happy that it was like exclusively on PC and that they were just going to blow it out and everything. But then there are some strange bugs and just things that are sort of half complete, like things that I don't really care about, but it's just really weird. Like you go to the engineering bay and they have this super high detailed model of an engineer who's like, "Hey, how you doing?" Except like her mouth doesn't move. There's a little portrait at the top right of the screen that just like flashes a weird like low frame rate thing with a scratchy. Like they just clearly didn't have time or resources to animate her at all.
It's
not a bug. It's just like cutting corners left and right. Yeah,
two different choices from two different teams could have also evolved concurrently. Where it's like we're not going to really represent the characters, and then the people who made the characters were like, I really do think we should represent the characters. So look how close we can get the camera to this character's face and it still holds up.
So the thing I want to quickly go back to the thing about controllers really quickly, because just as a game developer, that is completely fascinating to me because it is so rare to have that opportunity these days. Like
to not have to unless a gamepad.
Yes, and I'm not saying that is good on balance. Like just objectively
That's interesting,
for everyone, but it's really interesting, because unless you're making a game that is so completely and utterly only feasible on PC, not just because of the hardware, but just because of the audience and everything else. And I'm talking about, like, for instance, Paradox Grand strategy games, like Crusader Kings or Hearts of Iron, right? Like, realistically, it would be a waste of everyone's time involved to put that on consoles. Just because realistically, you're like, all the things you'd have to do wouldn't make sense on that platform, right? Like no judgment on anything, just like realistically, that's the case. XCOM is not necessarily like that. Like as we saw from XCOM 1, like you can clearly make that game work on console, and that's what makes it crazy that they didn't. Because even shipping games on PC these days, a PC is such a moldable piece of hardware. You can make it be anything you want. You can basically make it be a console, and put it in your living room in a small case and put a controller on it, or you can attach a Steam Link to it and have it stream to your TV. You can basically treat it like a console if you want to. And so if you're a game developer, even if you're making a PC first game, it's just kind of a given that it's like, okay, well, we have to.
It's also going to be a console game for most people at this point.
Exactly. And so even working on Firewatch, which is not a game that has like probably a fifth of the inputs that XCOM 2 has based on what you're saying, it still is really, really challenging to design a unified UI and input system that takes into account, that is like equally appropriate with mouse and keyboard and with controllers, and these days with multiple controllers, a Steam controller and a PS4
with
controller.
A weirdo Steam controller.
Yeah, and so just thinking about how different and freeing that must have felt for them to be like, we're actually just making a straight up PC game. That is just really interesting. And again, I'm not saying it's like better objectively for like the consumer or anything, but it is a really interesting thing to think about. And I bet it made development of that game feel very different.
Well, it probably also spiraled out into other decisions as well, because this game is fucking hard.
Oh, yeah?
From the first mission. Oh, man. Like, having played a ton of the original XCOM, I went in thinking, like, oh, there's going to just be, like, the tutorial level, and I'll sort of get my feet under me. I'll play on the second of 2 difficulty levels, and I'll probably this will be a cakewalk. This is going to be whatever. Jesus Christ, I got crushed. And man. Like, I have a feeling that this game was made specifically for people who played the original game in a way that I don't know if it would have been had it be like a sequel
we also
specifically for all platforms, and something.
We talked about this a little bit when we were talking about Fallout 4 too, that it feels like this is XCOM 2 is a sequel to XCOM, obviously, and Fallout 4 is a sequel to Fallout 3, but also I think you can look at the crazy multi-access on Steam of like, what the hell are people playing? Like, what are people playing in general right now that would be interested in XCOM? And it is things like, on one weird axis, you do have like the Paradox Grand Strategy stuff, and on another axis, you have things like Dark Souls. And I mean, that's the example that I gave last time. But I mean, I think that it is probably an easier decision right now to say people are actually playing stuff that's hard. Like hard games that actually challenge the shit out of you are selling.
We're in a moment for that, for sure. I mean, it's been a long... I wouldn't say a moment. I mean, I think we're in an era
I mean, even to the
now
point that
I think
you're playing a Tomb Raider game that strips a whole bunch of stuff and puts you in a survival situation. Like, people are just into that right now.
Yeah. And I think specifically with XCOM, they probably looked at just kind of the things that people were sharing about that game and like actually talking about, and the conversation was always around like, oh, my guys died. Like, oh shit, Jake, I made Jake and he died.
I've already and that's hilarious. XCOM was how wrecked you get
exactly
that
right,
game.
and so I think it's an obvious choice to just even push that further.
I mean,
and they did bump up the customization of all the characters as well. Like that. It's like the game is
so now
the game is like specifically designed
they're
to like
in on making a guy that you care about, and then he's just gonna get fucking wrecked by an alien. The end.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, in the first few days of that game being out, I already saw like epic Twitter Storify stories telling the tale of their squad, and then I saw there was already a movement I saw persuading people to try and like on their first playthrough of the game go in on like veteran mode or whatever the most difficult hardcore mode or whatever. Like I saw a sort of thread of that.
Just to give you an idea, like if you remember in the first XCOM. By the end of the game, those little like sectoid alien guys could control your players. Like they could use like mind control to like take control of your guys. They can do that from the first level in this game, and they do it the second they see you. Right. Like I mean, like I play on the second mission. I just walked around.
That must pair with the concealment system that you must have to really like.
You've got to really like take them out fast.
That also
because there's no other way to counter it in the early game
with the sort of like thematic like the sort of story and premise changes. That also feels really good in my opinion.
Yeah.
Just like if you're like, this is the highest risk shit that people have attempted inside of the sort of construct of this world. It makes sense that right off the bat, the first thing you're going to see as a player of this game is your guy's brain being ripped away from him by an alien.
Pretty much.
That is also an interesting thing to think about in the context of a sequel, because that, generally speaking, in video games that are sort of challenge driven, a sequel means the plot continues, but we still reset the challenge curve to ease you in the same way we did in the first game, basically. Even if the like knowledge curve starts assuming you know stuff from the first game, the challenge curve still eases you into it. And it's interesting to think about. I mean, I'm sure they didn't literally start with the game being as hard as the last level, like the final stages of XCOM 1, but it is interesting to think about there being more continuity there. between the two games, because that is also just like, you think about an RPG, right? A big epic RPG where your characters become incredibly powerful, and then the next game you're still like just fighting bullshit at the beginning because you're level 1. You know, like it's I don't know. That's you've made me really want to play this game.
Yeah,
good.
You guys, what? You got more?
No, I don't. I've got nothing. XCOM 2.
Shall we take a break?
Yeah.
All right. Break video game. This episode of Idle Thumbs is brought to you by Postmates. Postmates is a courier service that uses the internet to send all kinds of goods or foods from a store to your door.
Nice.
Yeah, how about that? You can download the Postmates app and use the promo code THUMBS for a free first delivery from like just all kinds of businesses in your area. When we first were sponsored by Postmates, we hypothesized that if you live in the San Francisco area, you might use it to order a hilarious old-time diner food from a hilarious old-time...
like a hamburger stand. It's a hamburger stand.
Hamburger stand, yeah, called Whiz Burger, which is near the old Idle Thumbs studio. It turns out our buddy, the Gun Run of Twitch.tv, frequently uses Postmates to order Whiz Burgers. This is like this is already a thing in San Francisco, and we had no idea.
He already has the Whiz Burger delivered to his home or office.
Yep.
But you don't need to live in San Francisco, and you don't need to order from Whiz Burger.
No, but I feel like it's a good example of how to use this service to its fullest. You can download the Postmates app on iTunes or Android, enter the code THUMBS, get a free first delivery. You'll get your stuff in under an hour. I went on there and searched for Whiz Burger, and it was on there, which blew my mind. So Postmates, use the offer code THUMBS for a free first delivery. Valentine's Day is this weekend.
It's true.
You have very few days to get your Valentine's plan into action. This episode of Idle Thumbs is brought to you by ProFlowers, and they will send flowers on your behalf to anyone, really. Most traditionally to someone with whom you're romantically entangled, but you could get creative.
Nick Breckon.
Send them to your dad.
Oh, I mean send them to your dad.
Nick Breckon. If you go to proflowers.com, click the microphone in the top right corner and type in the offer code THUMBS, you will be presented with various deals. For instance, for just $29.99, a dozen red roses and a glass vase, and for a $9.99 upgrade, those roses, the vase, you get chocolates, and you get a spa kit. We actually have the glass vase with the long stem, uber romantic roses.
They look very nice.
Sitting on our studio recording table in between the three of us.
If you sense something in the air between the host of Idle Thumbs this week.
If you sense an electricity, an amorous energy, if you will, it is these. They're really beautiful. We've had them in the office for like a week now, and they're still looking good. Proflowers.com. You click that microphone. You put in the offer code THUMBS. Oh, also, this came with a box of chocolates that I stole it and didn't tell anyone and took it home and ate them with Sarah. So,
how romantic.
But so there were some that came with it, but I ate them.
I bet they were really good, Chris.
They were. Proflowers.com, click that microphone, enter offer code THUMBS.
Look really smart and capable this Valentine's Day. Or steal your friend's chocolates if they bring them to the office.
Video game. And we're back.
Hey.
Oh.
How's it going, guys?
Pretty good.
Yeah.
Man, this was something that I remembered when we were recording the last segment that I just didn't have a way to bring up.
Wait, XCOM or flowers?
It's kind of neither. But someone mentioned like surfing the net. It might have been me. And I remembered this like amazing video that I saw the other day that was from, I think, 1990.
Oh, I know what you're going to play because I think I posted it up. I'm assuming that this is that PBS show?
I don't know. It was about an internet cafe on Haight Street in San Francisco.
Okay. We're talking about different
which is like 2 blocks away from me. And it was a local news report from the early 90s about the Horseshoe Cafe, which had had internet access and may have been the country's first internet cafe.
Oh, crazy.
They'd already been open for a while when this news report went up. And it was a really cool thing to watch. If you search for the Horseshoe Internet Cafe, I found this article on hoodline.com, which is the local blog for the neighborhood where I live. And it was a really crazy thing to see. It talked about like San Francisco's young Haight Street teens.
Oh, man.
They were wearing like just incredibly 90s clothing.
That's awesome. Man,
enjoyable.
Okay, I was thinking of a different video from the mid-90s about the internet and about emerging technology, and I think I should play a little bit of it for you, Chris.
Oh, sure.
Is where we will spend the rest of our lives.
There comes a time in all our lives when we begin to wonder exactly what is this thing called reality. For me, right now, reality is the fact that I am Jeff Goldblum, host of Future Quest, doing the opening of this episode on virtual reality. Now, if this were virtual reality, it would be almost the same, except completely different. You'd experience me as being here, but I wouldn't actually be here. And yet, on various levels, I would be. That is, I'd be virtually right here. Are you following this? Virtual reality is the technology for moving through and interacting with the three-dimensional computer-generated environment.
Anyway, sorry. That's Jeff Goldblum introducing a like mid-90s PBS special on virtual reality where he is inside multiple cascading televisions.
Well, look that up. What should people search for to find that? I guess just Jeff Goldblum.
Search for Jeff
Quest.
Jeff Goldblum Future Quest.
Yeah.
The video on YouTube is called Future Quest Clip.
.mpeg. .move.
Yes, it's future_quest.avi. Sorry, I thought that was a good opening to the reader mail segment.
That was the best opening that I can imagine, Jake. Danielle Charles writes, "Hey there. Oh man, I hope I'm the first one to say this, but if it's old news, feel free to disregard. I'm a new reader, and I've been listening back through old podcasts I'd never heard. I just hit episode 43, in which Chris does the condescending nerd voice for quite a while as he describes a fan-suggested Firefighter game. I chuckled to myself for a while as he described playing as a fireman, calling in orders, and non-firefighting tasks done in the meantime, because the longer he goes on, the more similarities with Firewatch I keep hearing. It's not quite the same game, but I was struck by what I heard. The best part is as the summary wraps up, Jake speaks up over the guys laughing about how he would totally play that game. Fuck both of you guys." And I laughed. Much love, Danielle, a.k.a. Juna. P.S. Sorry if this is redundant. For all I know, this is common knowledge, and that's exactly where the idea for Firewatch came from. And I'm the one out of the loop. Nope, it is not. It is not, Danielle.
It is not. I've heard a couple people refer to that firefighting game email.
I haven't seen that mentioned in a while.
I think the firefighting game, as discussed on that episode, was a lot more mechanically focused than Firewatch is. But whatever, I would still also play that game.
Me too.
Good.
Nop from Thailand writes, "Hi Thumbs, longtime listener, first time writer. Since you guys were talking about Bridge a couple podcasts ago, I thought this news would be interesting to you. Basically, the police in Thailand raided a bridge club thinking it was a gambling den. The game perplexed them, and they couldn't charge the elderly players with gambling, so they charged the group with an antiquated law about processing more than 120 cards." Cheers. Nop from Thailand.
Good.
Yep. And then he links a news article from The Guardian, whose headline is "How Trumped Up Charges Led Thai Police to Raid Expat Bridge Club." So,
wow,
there you go.
So many cards.
Busting up that bridge.
Got a lot of cards in here.
It is amazing how many old weird laws there just are in most places that just never get enforced, but also never got changed because they weren't important, but are still technically around. It's dumb and weird, and good also, kind of. Except when it ends up in
actually
arresting old people because they're playing bridge. That's probably not the best. Meredith Mallet writes, "Hey Thumbs, I want to share this revelation I had during my witnessing today about the perfect companion app for this game. It's Snapchat. Snapchat has a built-in pen tool that lets you draw little notes directly onto your photos. Oh my god!
Yeah.
And I've started using it in place of pen and paper to mark down the various puzzle solutions. I'll snap a picture of the little board and then wander off to find the answer, drawing it on my snap as I go along. I've attached a link to one of my snaps in question. It's the solution to one of the puzzles in one of the buildings of the small town area near the center of the island. The yellow one that's a door in the light brown building with the... Okay, well, I mean, she's describing the puzzle, but that's fine. Anyway, Meredith, that is brilliant.
No, that's a really good idea.
That is really, really clever. The way that I have... her link is broken. I can't look at her image. That's a bummer. The way that I've been doing this is I draw the game board in pen, and then I do my solutions in pencil and erase them and try again if I didn't quite get it. That's what I've been doing. I mean, it's incredibly inefficient, obviously.
It's more efficient than what I do, which is just keep it all in my brain and just it feels like just mental torture. I did that for
a long time, but it starts to become kind of...
it hurts. I don't know how much of that game you've played. But I played a decent amount.
I do the worst thing. I just draw a grid out from scratch every single time I need to note down what a puzzle is. So I just have...
I mean, I do that too, but I do the solution part in pencil so I can erase it.
Oh, I just draw it over and over and over.
Really?
Again.
You draw the same puzzle a bunch of times?
I just draw over it. I have like 3 or 4 different pens and just ruin my life. It's not the best.
Yeah.
Someone should make a Witness puzzle board whiteboard.
I was thinking about that. You could probably
store that on a thumbs.net. Get your Witness puzzle solver.
Yeah.
Man, the best one of those, fucking being a whiteboard would be if it's the where you draw with the plastic pen and it imprints down on like the dark gray cellophane and then you peel it up to erase. Yes.
Oh man.
That's what I want.
Yeah.
Like a road trip activity center Witness solver.
Yeah. I was thinking more like the magnet version. You know, the road trip. You remember those road trip games that you would have like the little,
like a magnet doodle.
Like the little like the little like flip book. Do you remember these? Like they were like plastic, but then they would like flip out and they were like mini versions of like board games that had little like little tiny magnets that you could just sort of place on the board. Oh, it was awful. Played a million of those.
All right, so Ulf Hartelius writes, that is a good name if that's your name. That's probably not.
A lot of good names this week.
Yeah, true. Hi, Thumbs. The topic for this email is the discussion on camera and controls in first-person games you had in episode 248. We had a very similar discussion in my office not long ago, given recent games like Gone Home and how they should be very accessible to people unaccustomed to modern games, but sometimes aren't because of the whole concept of mouse and keyboard or twin-stick controls being so unintuitive at first sight. And to be fair... arguably too advanced for the games you play them with. Way back in the 1990s, when 3D controls were still a big mystery no one really understood, a lot of games used what is commonly referred to as tank controls. Hitting left or right would make your character turn left or right instead of strafing, while hitting forward moved your character forward relative to her own direction. Not only third-person games like Resident Evil, but also pretty much all the classic first-person RPGs like Might and Magic did it this way. I'd argue that if this way of doing it had become the dominant trend, games would be less fast-paced, but maybe more accessible to casual players. I'd be curious to see games like Gone Home, The Witness, and Firewatch allow players to select this control setup. What is your take on tank controls? Ulf Hartelius. P.S. I also think Myst-style clicking your way forward using discrete scenes would work wonders for games like Gone Home and The Witness if combined with a free or semi-free camera in each scene.
It would also allow those games to be in VR a lot more easily because you would not barf when the camera moves without your control.
Yeah.
I wonder what the...
Although, as someone who obviously does play games, it would kill me to because I
you just naturally
movement.
Yeah.
I wonder what the because I know that there was a real-time 3D remake of Myst.
Real Myst. Cyan actually experimented with all of this stuff. Myst and Uru, which was the Myst online game.
Oh yeah.
They like, even though you could full traditional first person in those games, they also had single button, like they had mouse only controls where you could press a button that would not I don't think they did straight tank controls, but what they did was they just put a walk button on the mouse, so you could just press a button that would move your guy forward, and then you'd move around with the mouse and let go to stop moving. And you could also, I think, click on the ground to sort of like, it would then path your camera there on a curve, so you could just click where you wanted to go, and it would Myst node to node you.
Right.
So you could hold the mouse button down and locomote, or you could use WASD. And I thought that was a crazy combination. Epic, when they first moved Unreal to iOS, did a tech demo called Epic Citadel, and it also looked at a bunch of these things where they had...
That's right, it had the click and move.
It had, you could put your thumbs in the bottom corners of the iPad, and that simulated dual stick, or you could click to move, or you could hold down and drag your finger around, and whenever your finger was held for an extended period of time, your character would path. And I think they were very much trying to be like, how can we take our tool set of first-person games and make a game that a person on an iPad could play? And it was all really interesting stuff that I don't think anyone's really pursued.
No.
I mean, that sort of click to where you want to go and then drag to look around seems like the sort of thing that that the witness would have to pursue if it went to iOS, right? Because that game as dual thumbs on an iPad would be a disaster.
Yeah, and it also seems like that game especially would be able to support that because it has these stations that are sort of built into the game. It feels like it would be really fairly simple to say, like, if you're within this zone, focus the camera on the station. Then when you click away from this zone...
Man, you could do a crazy gross thing where you place 1 billion of those station points all over the map. But I mean, well, the witness, you're free roaming then if you click, if you're like, it seems like if you're close enough to a puzzle panel and looking kind of at it when you enter puzzle mode, then it'll transition you into being framed. But
that's what I mean. Like, I feel like it could just do that. You could just tweak the the sort of bounds of that, and it would probably be...
But it'll... I don't know specifically about tank controls in first person because I think it's true that it seems like they make more sense and require less like thinking and remapping of your brain to understand them, but they also are still really bad at letting people actually look where they want to look and stuff because it feels like people end up just snaking around everywhere.
I don't know, maybe. I think for people who do have trouble with twin stick, and again, it's really hard for me to put myself into this viewpoint because I'm so just as someone who plays a lot of games, I'm so fluid with strafe style mouse look and twin stick. But a thing I've noticed when you make games and you show them you play test them with people who don't play games as much, you notice that a thing they often do is they walk somewhere, then they kind of look around, then they walk. So they're not doing what I'm doing, which is like always moving the camera all the time, looking in all directions because
and then sort of counter rotating
exactly.
against
I'm
the
really
look.
good at like strafing against where I'm looking. That's just like a ridiculous thing, like to do.
Metroid Prime on the GameCube had single stick first person, and it was weird.
Nick, you talked about this.
Yeah. I mean, and that's a good example of it, right? Yeah. I mean, it's a full. I mean, that they didn't really kind of restrain the level geometry in a way. Like, I mean, there's things you have to look at, like up in the top of a level, right? Mm-hmm. But they designed, and jump to.
It's a very vertical game,
right? But I think that the thing that they did is they still took that stuff into account when there was a jumping puzzle, for instance, or something like that, where they kept it very.
Well, didn't they also automatically adjust your look up and down on ledges and things like that? Like,
well, they had the locking mechanism, so if you held the Z, it would
also
snap
I think
to.
The game subtly framed your view when you were on a place where you clearly have to jump because it's a ledge. Like I remember that game kind of.
I don't remember that at all. I mean, you might not be. I might have just not noticed it. My memory is more that just a lot of the jumping puzzles were just framed to.
That's what I mean.
To go off into the distance to sort of snake around themselves, so you could.
The
see
geometry
them from far
was.
away.
They just really took that turn radius into account.
It might be all of those things.
Yeah. Yeah, I think they just took it into account with the level design, in just a really smart way. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I don't know. I think. Yeah.
I mean, with third-person games, I feel like there's not really... Third-person games always, because they're not representing any part of... nobody walks in third person in life, and so that is kind of odd. And so that there's... I feel like many third-person controls games are sort of make the best of what we can do. Yeah. Whereas in first-person, I think it would be interesting to see some more... just like straight up experimentation with this, and to your
because nobody strafes in real life either, Chris.
Well,
I mean, really, you don't.
You totally don't. No,
I mean, in real life, if you were just if you recorded the movement of somebody using the Vive, nobody would be counter strafing around a room.
But people, if you're looking around a space and not walking forward, you don't strafe. But people's feet do crazy shit where like a foot will cross backwards over a foot, and then you'll take half a step backwards, and you've rotated yourself like 100 degrees, and you don't notice it because your upper body is tipped the opposite direction. Right. Like you do crazy shit as a human body.
The thing that is different,
but it's not. You're not just literally circle strafing.
The thing that really is the difference, and this is what all of these first-person control methods have to try and solve, is that in life, when you turn, just intrinsically whether your intention is to turn your entire body or just to rotate your neck, but
your eyes,
or just your eyes.
Yeah.
Whereas the game, if you say look left, the game doesn't know if you mean your entire body is rotating left, your upper body is rotating left, your neck is rotating left, or your eyes are just looking to the left. And so the game has to pick one. It just has to pick one basically, and say that's how this game works. I think there are games that in multiplayer try and actually intuit that, so that if you are looking left while going forward, the game tries to figure out what you're told.
I remember
you're not actually strafing, and they'll draw the guy running forward, but with the upper body looking to the side. Yeah,
I remember. God, maybe I'm just remembering Trespasser, but I'm pretty sure that game has some give in terms of if you turn the mouse to the left, it's just moving your head up to a certain point, and then your shoulders start to rotate.
A lot of games do that a lot more as well now, or not a lot more, but that's a thing that people try and invest in,
and it's cool. But it's only a visual thing. Yeah. Like the control scheme itself is not changing to.
Right. It's basically bolting a really smart puppet on top of the same controls. From Quake.
Yeah. As far as the controls, you have to just absolutely pick it. Like this is a game where you strafe with left or right, or this is a game where you look with left or right, and that's it. And pretty much all modern games use the strafe method.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God. The next email is crazy. Okay. So Bice Dibley writes, "Hi Thumbs, I thought I would take the intro script from shnapple.com/thumbs to its logical yet ridiculous conclusion. If you visit idlestthumbs.appspot.com, so that is idlestthumbs.appspot.com, you can save yourself the strain."
Idle Saint Thumbs.
STTH?
Yes. IDLESTTHUMBS.
Okay.
I'm not sure what that means. .appspot.com. You can save yourself the strain on your vocal cords and instead generate the podcast intro audio as an MP3. The sound clips are from previous podcasts and stitched together by code that can only be described as artisanal. The most important lesson learned from the development of Idlest Thumbs is that Chris has never said 58 on the podcast. Thanks. Well, I have now.
Oh my God. Okay, so
thanks for the podcast, Bice Dibley.
Who's on this week's episode? Let's say that it's
P.S. This is an important postscript. This supports the years 2014 to 2020 and episode numbers from 1 to 999. I think we're going to run out of years before we run out of episode
only up
numbers.
to 199?
Only up to 999.
Okay, so I'm going to generate an intro right now.
Okay.
And let's give this a listen.
I can't believe someone made this. Thank you, Bice.
Yeah, this is crazy.
And thank you, Shnapple, for the progenitor to this. This has been a
It's
good...
February 10th, 2016. This is Idle Thumbs 249. I'm Chris Remo.
I'm Jake Rodkin.
I'm Danielle Riendo.
I'm Sean Vanneman. I'm James Spafford. I'm Steve Gaynor.
Whoa!
And I'm Nick Breckon.
Yeah, that's
that was
insane.
Crazy.
Yeah,
wow.
That's really good. Wow. There is a Nick checkbox. I just didn't check it.
No, that's fine. Wow, that's nuts.
Yeah,
it sounded entirely natural. I mean, as natural as our awkward intros are.
He's got all kinds of options here. Nearest Wednesday is the default. Today, tomorrow, any other specific date that you can fill in below. Episode number, by default, it does the next one. And then hosts with 7 checkboxes.
Wow. God, this thing is insane.
It's February 10th, 2016. This is Idle Thumbs 850. I'm Nick Breckon.
Oh, my date didn't.
There's no way to just force "and I'm Nick Breckon."
No, you can't do an "and." It doesn't depend on.
You can't check the box 3 times. I'm Nick Breckon. I'm Nick Breckon, and I'm Nick Breckon.
Man, this is crazy.
Man,
idlestthumbs.appspot.com.
Yeah.
Wow. That makes me pretty happy.
I know, that's amazing.
Makes Jake the happiest, I think.
It's amazing.
That's...
This thing is getting close to just... So here's the thing.
Yeah.
If that little intro thing was coupled with the Thumbs DB... do you guys remember Thumbs DB? It was someone made a thing to track the YouTube thing. The last rev of Thumbs DB would let you pick a game, and it would make a YouTube playlist of only discussions about that game.
Yep.
So you could just listen to every time Idle Thumbs talked about XCOM, and it would just make you a mini XCOM episode. You could combine that with this and just roll infinite Idle Thumbs episodes at this point. I'd only want to hear the 3 times they talked about Tropico in the year 2025. Anyway.
Yeah.
Well, sounds like a podcast.
I think it was. Yeah.
Thanks for joining me on this podcast, you guys.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, anytime.
And you, the readers. I appreciate it.
Only Chris appreciates the readers.
I don't think only I appreciate the readers. I would say that Postmates also appreciates the readers, and that is why this podcast was brought to you by Postmates. Goods and foods from all sorts of stores straight to your doors. You can download the Postmates app on iOS or Android and use the offer code THUMBS for a free first delivery from Whiz Burger or anywhere else. Thanks, Postmates. Thanks. If you like this podcast, please consider giving us a rating or review on iTunes, and please especially consider telling a friend and spreading the word. It really helps us out. It's the only way we have to grow the show. It's really, really, really highly appreciated. You can send us email at questions@idlethumbs.net. We're on Twitter @idlethumbs and on Facebook at facebook.com/idlethumbs. Also, we have sort of relaunched one of our long dormant podcasts, the Idle Book Club, which can be found at our website, idlethumbs.net, along with all the rest of our shows. We just put up our first new full episode, which is on the novel Fates and Furies by Lauren Groff, which in the time since we released our preview episode was declared by Obama to be his favorite book of 2015.
Nice.
So we got that Obama bump.
What are you guys reading next month so people can catch up starting now?
Next month, we are reading Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro, which was made into a movie several years ago. He's also the author of The Remains of the Day, which is like one of my favorite books. I have not read this one. I've not read Never Let Me Go, so we'll see how that goes. I'm doing the podcast now with my fiance, actually, Sarah Argadale. We talk about our experiences reading the books. We read letters from podcast listeners, and we, one book a month. It's a good kind of easy pace to keep if you're looking to try and read more this year, which is definitely a thing that is helpful for me about doing this podcast. It's a kind of a fun way to do it because you can talk to all the people in the Idle Thumbs community who are also following along. There was a really just highly active forum thread for the first book, and I imagine there will be for the rest of them as well. So anyway, you can find the Idle Book Club at idlethumbs.net with all the rest of our shows. And thanks for listening.
Thanks.
Thank you, Chris.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah.